Canadian visits to the United States are down almost 30% in 2025, the steepest drop in decades. And it's not just border towns feeling it. From New York to Florida, Washington State to Hawaii, economies that depend on Canadians are hurting. Today we're breaking down where the damage is sharpest and how much money is at stake and what the next 3 months could look like. National picture. Through May, international arrivals to the U.S. were down 2.4% compared to last year, but Canada down nearly 17% year to date. In June, Canadians returning from U.S. trips fell a staggering 28.7% compared to 2024. That's 1 in 3 fewer cars crossing the border. The U.S. Travel Association warns a 10% drop in Canadian travel equals $2.1 billion in lost revenue and 14,000 U.S. jobs gone. At 30%, you're talking $6 billion evaporating. Why? Politics? High costs? Weaker Canadian currency? And let's be honest, frustration with U.S. rhetoric and border policy. Upstate New York. New York's border economy is on fire, but in the worst way. Border crossings through the Peace Bridge were down 22% in May, and the Rainbow Bridge into Niagara was off nearly 29%. Local papers estimate that Upstate has already lost about $3 billion in Canadian revenue this year. Hotels, restaurants, outlet malls, all reporting emptier weekends. Even Buffalo Airport feels it. Canadian passengers are down 11% so far this year. When Canadians stop driving south for day trips, the ripple is brutal. Gas stations, diners, even parking lots tied to the Canadian dollar, all of it collapses. Washington State. Across the continent in Washington State, it's the same story. At Blaine, the busiest land crossing, Canadian traffic was down 43% in March and 52% in April. By July, crossings were still running 31% below 2024 numbers. Local researchers surveyed shops in Whatcom County. Sales are plunging, part-time staff are losing shifts, and restaurants are half full. Bellingham once marketed itself as Vancouver's bargain basement. Not anymore. Michigan and Maine. Michigan's Sault Ste. Marie Bridge saw crossings drop 27% in June, 24% in July. Year to date, down 23%. These aren't just tourists, they're hunters, fishers, families booking cabins. Lodges report sharp cancellations. Meanwhile, in Maine, June entries from Canada fell over 25%. And remember, Canadians spent $500 million in Maine in 2024. That's at least 75 to 125 million vanishing this year if trends hold. Vermont and New Hampshire. Vermont has seen Canadian border crossings drop 23%, enough that the state government launched Canada-only travel discounts. In New Hampshire, officials admit Canadian tourists are down about 30%. Border data shows 17% fewer crossings by May. That's a serious blow heading into fall foliage season. And ski resorts this winter are bracing for double-digit declines. Sun destinations. It's not just border towns. Big destinations are hurting too. Las Vegas says Canadian visitation is down 20%. Hotel occupancy dropped 15% this summer. Hawaii, Canadian arrivals are down 9.4% year to date. That's 25,000 fewer tourists and nearly 635 million less. Florida, in the second quarter, Canadian visitors fell 13% year over year. That's 100,000 fewer snowbirds and beachgoers. Analysts warn winter bookings may be flat to down 10% unless flights are added. Why it's happening? 3 drivers explain this collapse. Politics and policy. Disrespect and annexation threats, travel fees, tighter screening, trade fights. Canadians are voting with their wallets. Number 2, air capacity. Airlines cut Canada-US flights by 5 to 15% in some markets. Less supply equals higher fares. Number 3, economics. The Canadian dollar is weaker and household budgets are strained. To be honest with you, I think the biggest one is disrespect and annexation threats. Projections. So what's next? Border states like Washington, Maine, Vermont, and Michigan expect 20 to 35% fewer Canadians through fall. Las Vegas, 15 to 20% drop likely through year end. Hawaii, expect 8 to 12% fewer arrivals for 2025 compared to 2024. Florida, Canadians could finish the year down 10 to 15% overall. Nationally, economists forecast international arrivals down more than 8% this year, and Canadian spending specifically could shrink by up to $6 billion. America's closest friend, its number one neighbor, is quietly staying home, and U.S. communities are paying the price, from Niagara Falls to Waikiki. The next 3 months will show us if this is just a dip or the new normal. If you found this breakdown useful, hit like, share it with someone who's felt the change, and subscribe for more Canada First commentary right here on North of MAGA.